Welcome back as we continue on our photographic journey. We just got done with portraits. Now we're going to move on to landscapes. So with portraits, you found somebody or some animal to shoot. And now this time with landscapes, you're going to get outside now that it's nice out. The flowers are budding. It's looking nice out, and hopefully we can get some lovely shots. So just for your reference, just know that anything that has to do with the landscape is just, for our all intents purposes, is going to be anything taken outside. You can have people in it if you want to, but just make sure that these photos are taken outside, focusing on our ever expansive views in the world. All right, kick us off here. We'll start talking about depth of field. So we talked about this with portraits, where you want to have a small depth of field because you want that person to be in focus, but the background to be out of focus. This one's going to be a little bit opposite with our landscapes. You want everything to be in focus because we want to see everything. I wrote in here, the simplest way to do this is to choose a large number aperture. So the larger number the aperture means the smaller the opening, and that gives you the greatest depth of field. Again, it's a little confusing and it goes opposites. So large number, small opening, large depth of field. So really we want everything in the foreground, which is in front of us. So in this case, it could be some of the brush right here, and then this, I guess we're hiking up a mountain here, so part of this little mountain in Arizona. The foreground to be in focus. You have the middle ground, which may be a little mountain in the background to be in focus. Or in that middle ground, and then in the far background, even in the clouds, like everything is focused and nothing is too blurred out. So large depth of field, everything in focus. And then here's a little, some imagery that hopefully is easier to understand than me trying to explain it over and over. So again, on the top, we have our aperture, which opens and closes in the lens. So a small number gives you a large opening, and then on here, you're going to have a blurry background. Now on the right side, which we're going to focus on for landscapes, you have a large number, so an f-stop of 22, small opening of the aperture, and then we go down, so nothing's going to be blurry. So in this little picture, the mountains in the background and the person can all be in focus, and that's what we're going for. Another image that we looked at during portraits, for portraits on the left side, again, small number, large aperture opening, small depth of field. This is what we wanted for portraits, where this little plant was in focus, everything in the background out of focus. And again, over on the right, this is what we're striving for with our landscapes. Foreground, middle ground, background, everything in focus. And then again here, the aperture is, or it's a large number, small aperture opening, large depth of field. So a couple little things to keep in mind as we're going through this. So talking about the aperture opening, as a result of that small little opening, the shutter speed might be a little bit longer because the camera might need to let in more light. So because that shutter is a little bit longer, if you have a tripod laying around, which I don't know if you do, and you probably don't, you can use a tripod. If you don't have the tripod, try to brace your body while you're taking shots. Don't have any slight movement as you're shooting and pressing down the shutter. And that'll try to get rid of any little blur that might be happening. So have a tripod, or if you have a tripod, use it. If not, brace yourself when you're taking photos, just in case anything gets a little bit blurry. Next on here is having a focal point. So if you're outside shooting, again, in like a nice little expansive landscape, you still want to have something to really look at. So all shots still need some type of focal point in the landscape. So on here, I said focal points, they could come in many forms here. So a building or a structure. So this is a picture that was taken in Switzerland. So they have this amazing landscapes that I was taking photos of. And these are all grapevines that are growing on the side of the Swiss Alps. But here, even though you have foreground, middle ground, background, all in focus, you can see what's all going on, lovely landscape. It's still nice to have like a little focal point of this house. And composition wise, it's still in the top left quadrant, or intersection of rule of thirds. So still following those rules, but it could be, again, a type of building or structure, a striking tree, or maybe a tree that is a little bit different than all other trees around it, so it sticks out. A boulder or some type of rock formation, silhouettes, if you're shooting during golden hour, can still stick out. So you still want to focus on something even though you're going to have a pretty expansive landscape that you're going to be shooting here. And again, keep in mind all rules of composition as you're going through this. Next is to consider your surroundings. Now we're lucky at this time of year here in Minnesota where we're going to have the leaves are coming in. We have all the lakes around here. So you have, or hopefully should have, a lot of places that you can at least walk around and shoot here. But you want to look around and consider what's going on. So I just wrote in here, so most landscapes are going to have either a dominant foreground or like sky. So whatever's happening in front of you or the sky in the background. Unless you have one or the other, your shot can end up being fairly boring. So look for that an interesting sky or interesting foreground. If you do have a bland or boring sky, don't let it dominate your shot. Place the horizon. And the horizon is going to be like this little line in the middle where the trees and water meet. So you're going to have that horizon line where the sky and the land meets here. Don't let it dominate your shot. Place the horizon in the upper third of your shot. Again, if you have a boring sky. And then opposite, if you have interesting sky with really cool clouds, then you can place the horizon on the lower third. So whatever's more interesting, have that take up 2/3 of the space while you're shooting. Next is going to have to do with framing. And now when all the leaves are coming in, using trees, using leaves, you can have some interesting framing in your shots. That'll do, again, like a natural little frame for you. So I showing here, you can use trees, branches, stationary objects, and then have your focal point in the middle. So this is the Eiffel Tower on the left. So using the clouds and the trees on the sides to frame in the shot in the middle. And this is Sacré-Cœur, that is close to the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. Same thing here, having the trees go around it while that can be in the middle, still framing out your image. So having the natural frames with your landscapes can be an interesting thing to do too. Next is to create movement. So when most people think about landscapes, you can think of like calm, serene, passive environments. However, landscapes, they're rarely completely still, and you can still try to find some movement that's going on. It can add drama, add a different mood, and create a nice little point of interest. So since that shutter's a little bit longer, you could get some movement in there. So you can see wind in trees if trees are moving a little bit, waves on a beach, water flowing over the waterfall. So this is that Minnehaha Falls. So you can see it looks very kind of cloudy and foggy because the water is constantly moving. So you can capture movement within the water there too. Work with the weather. This might be the most annoying part, but maybe, again, the most important, because if you look outside and it's overcast, maybe in your head you don't think that's really great to shoot with. But unbeknownst to you, overcast days are like the perfect time to shoot because you get so much more color when the sun is not just beating down and drowning all the color out with the rays here. So this photo was taken of the Grand Canyon in Arizona on an overcast day. I did a little tour in the Grand Canyon. Our tour guide, who goes there like 3 times a week, every week, he was even excited this day because it was overcast. And you can even tell in the photo with the clouds in there, you can still see all the different colors throughout the Grand Canyon, even so far away, seeing all those lovely colors. So if the weather doesn't look great outside, it probably means you should go out and shoot. All right, just a couple more here. Golden hour, which is your Friday photo this week. Has to do with the hour the sun is coming up and then during the hour that the sun is going down. So these golden hour shots are great for landscapes. Lucky you, because you're doing landscapes. For a number of reasons. Just you don't have the sun just beating down, creating harsh shadows, which is nice. If the sun is setting or rising and you set that behind, say, a subject, even in your landscape, you can have that nice little glow around them. And so there's a lot of different things that you can do with that golden hour. Wrong one. Here we go. Different viewpoints. So this was taken in a little alleyway in Germany, but you want to find some different angles and some different viewpoints when you're shooting your landscapes. Don't just have the same old, just shot of your landscapes in the background, looking at trees, looking at clouds. You can find those fun angles. You can get low or find a vantage point and get high, find those fun angles. On here in this alleyway, shooting up and seeing all the shadows being cast even onto the buildings was kind of fun to see. All right, last but not least, here's some little examples of what's going on. So with those fun and different viewpoints or different angles, shooting up against something. So this is a windmill in the Netherlands. Doing some framing on here as well as finding a fun angle. This is the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA. This architecture is fantastic, so it's easy to have all these fun angles on here and then find a fun viewpoint. This is underneath the Eiffel Tower, again, looking at that structure, finding all that fun stuff. And if you do want to put people in your photos, here's a little photo of some nice hiking boots while we were hiking in Arizona with that nice little background going on there. So you're going to get outside, get shooting, find some fun landscapes, and I'll be excited to see what you come up with.